questions for our congressional candidates? Here, let me out of the way.
Once elected, you may be in the ideological minority. What are some strategies that you're going to use to accomplish your agendas, being that Congress may be majority Republican?
I think that's a great question. Thank you for that. And I think that what we need to do is, as Joanne mentioned, is it's just because we have a D after our name doesn't mean we can't have a conversation and work with the other side. And part of that is one of the things that I think Bill Posey fails out regularly, and a lot of them do, because it doesn't matter who's in charge, we should be working for our district. We're here in the district, and if we're not at the table and we're not having the conversations because we don't like somebody, then we're losing out on funding, we're losing out on resources and everything that we should be getting for our district. So we need to be focused on what's happening here, what's going on. Like, for example, with the infrastructure bill, all of the Republicans voted no, and then they run down and Ron DeSantis gets out with his microphone and says, hey, I got $9 billion for XYZ. No, that was all the infrastructure money, right? And Bill Posey voted no as well. And, so what we need to do is be part of those conversations, make sure that we're getting our piece, because we're paying taxes. So why should we be paying taxes and have all of our money go to a project in New York or California because our representative doesn't like what's going on, or it's not his party that's in charge.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. I definitely agree with all that. I will also add that it will get really bad for whichever one of us is really in Congress, because when we win, we are going to send a shockwave across this entire nation that a district like District 8 went Democrat. Oh my God, people are tired of the GOP. So the first thing that's going to happen is I think we're going to get, once we're that much more politically interesting, we are going to get a lot more money down here and a lot more attention on a national level from both parties, both to keep the district and to win back the district. So that's definitely going to benefit us. In terms of trying to get things done in Congress, I definitely want to join like the New Democrats and the Problem Solver Caucus. I want to be part of the conversation for the solutions. And a lot of times that is being able to frame what we need to do in terms that the Republicans think it's advantageous for them to do, right? I mean, that's not giving up our values, that's not compromising our values, that's simply saying, it's basically just saying human psychology, right? It's like, if you want to try to win back our district, then you need to help me do stuff, right? So it's trying to negotiation is always about trying to highlight what's in it for both parties. And as much as we hate to work with the GOP, the reality is we might have Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
I'm not going to let that happen.
And, but yes, thank you.
Just one thing I wanted to add to that, and that is, I do believe in negotiating, but it has to be with everyone being fair, right? That they bring something to the table, that it's not just us giving everything away. And I used this analogy the other night, and that is, when we have the majority and we have the table and we're dragging the table over to their house and saying, can you come sit at my table and eat my dinner? And they're like, oh, I hate corn and I hate peas and I hate this and that. So we throw everything out, right? So we need to take our table back to our house. They can come to our table, and if they don't want to play fair, then we can take away their silverware.
You guys brought up fairness and ethical behavior, morality, and all that. Can you both assure us you will conduct yourselves as Democrats and be as ethical and above the board and respectful to one another? Because what we don't want is to have infighting within our own party. Because you're going to be very competitive, and I get it. But I think it's important how you conduct yourselves. So what are you doing to ensure? Because it's going to get tough. And you're going to have a lot of stress.
Absolutely. That's what I'll say. Yes.
Yes.
So I 100% agree with you, and yes, I will. I absolutely assure that as well. We run a risk, a little bit of a risk here with the primary, right? We have to be very careful in a district as red as ours that we cannot general. Because one of us will win the primary and one of us will have to go on to the general, and the general is going to be a much, much different race with much, much different focus. So if we try to get our engaged primary voters out to vote for us, if we're not careful with our messaging, we're gonna destroy us for the for the general. And we both must keep number one focus on beating Bill Posey.
Yes.
Yes, Ashley?
So this kind of piggybacks off of what y'all have been saying and what Dan's question was. And, we've seen time and time after again, Democrats are nice, right? We love to compromise. However, we are consistently seeing that that's not working, right? We saw that with Obamacare, how we compromised with Obamacare and got literally everything taken away. Now we are seeing the inactions from the Democratic Party in Congress with the regardless of what the Republican Party is trying to say they're going to compromise with people.
Yes.
So I will say that I will 100% always vote Democratic values. Whether or not I will vote 100% with the Democrats every time along party lines instead of what's best for this district, I won't make that commitment because I don't want to make a promise that I can't keep during an election season. When you look at voting records for people like Stephanie Murphy and people like Val Demings and people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, there's some realities to keeping democratic values alive in a district like ours. And my number one commitment is to not let far-right extremism and the GOP take over this district. So I will not compromise my democratic values. I will always vote for my democratic values. I will not necessarily vote only along party lines just because it's the party, the big national party.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Did we hear confirmation that they'll support one another?
Oh, we shook on that.
Is that-
We shook on that last
Oh,
week.
okay.
We actually
Yeah.
did.
I've got more of a statement than a question, and that is that, one of my big concerns in the Democrats here and so forth is that I feel like there's a line in the sand that's been reached. There's a point where you cannot compromise, and what I mean by that is on LGBTQA rights or women's rights, or, there is a line in the sand, and, what we typically do is Republicans keep changing that line, pushing us farther.
Moving the goalposts.
And we cannot give away some of these ever.
So, yeah, when you're done, I think we're good.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that, obviously. And that line in the sand it's civil rights, it's human rights, and that encompasses all of those things, right? And we need to make sure that we don't back down on standing up for women, for LGBTQ people, for people of color, and all the people that we represent. We're here as a representation for many, many, many types of people, and we can't just look at it as just what's best for me, right? Like I said, it's what's best for us, for all of us, for we.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that, and that's a really, really good point, because there are civil liberties and civil rights issues, and there are fiscal issues. And my area of compromise will be with the fiscal issues. There's never any compromise, including, for example, the Women's Health Protection Act. There's no way that I would not vote for that. And other civil rights and human rights, I 100% believe that people are more important than money. So, I would even compromise fiscally to get what we want for civil rights and social aid.
Yes, and I think when it comes to the fiscal issues too, she mentioned one of the committees that she was interested in being on, and one of the committees that I'm interested in being on is the Oversight Committee, because I really believe that we do have the funding, there's plenty of money, it's priorities, and it's also how we divide up those priorities and how we say that money can be spent. And like they mentioned with the school board candidates, how specific money can only go to a specific thing, but if that funding isn't appropriate for what the thing it's supposed to go to, then it can be so many dollars all day long, but it doesn't fix the problem. And we saw that with the PPP loans and with these other issues throughout the pandemic, and money set aside for specific things, but written so narrowly that it doesn't really help the people that it's intended to help. And so I think that oversight and looking at how the fiscal dollars are targeted and who can have access to them is equally important as how much money we get. And so I'm sure Joanne wants to tell her website, so I'll give you mine. It's votedodge.com. And if any of you were there yesterday at that rally, you might have heard about the bus trip that we're taking to Washington, D.C., leaving on May 27th. We're going to protest and say we do not consent to the government taking over the rights of women and their healthcare choices. And so if you want to find out more information about that, you can find that on votedodge.com and sign up. And Joanne, you're welcome to come on the bus too if you'd like to. And we are going to stand in front of the White House, and we're going to, because we need to let them know that we want to expand the court. And we need to stand in front of the SCOTUS and let them know that we are not okay with them taking away our rights. So you can join us there. And I also have some buttons. I have some cards over there. And our Trailblazer group, we have some Trailblazer t-shirts as well if you want to join our Trailblazers and be out in the community shining a light on things that matter. We have those for a $20 donation as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, and my website is joanneterry.com, and I have petitions. If you haven't already signed my petitions, I have my petitions here.